Hey guys, welcome back. Pretty not straightforward on this one. We got some serious problems here. But this guy is gonna make it pretty straightforward.
We keep it straightforward. All right, welcome back guys. My name's Eric. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. So my buddy Justin is right, or partially right. This may not seem pretty straightforward to those of you who maybe haven't tried this before, and honestly it didn't really seem that straightforward to me even after watching a lot of how-to videos and things like that. So this is not a how-to video, and I'm not going to walk you step by step through the entire process, but what I am going to do is try to sum up what you need, what to expect, and how you can take this job on your own, because it is actually pretty straightforward when you get down to it and when you just start making these things happen. So I had a friend come over, buddy Jasper. He came down and helped me out. He's done this a bunch of times before, and while I haven't re-geared anything myself personally, especially something like a Dana 60 in particular, that is pretty specific with how it has to go back together and not the easiest thing to do, I wanted to make sure I had somebody with me that knew what they were doing and could kind of walk me through step by step so that I could figure it out and learn while we go. Now that said, having done it now, it's really pretty straightforward. It's not that crazy. It's not that complicated. There's just a few things that you're going to want to make sure that you do. Maybe some tools that you might want to have. Now, like I said, there's a lot of good videos out there that are step-by-step how-to videos. And I think at the end of the day, just the way that I operate, I kind of need to see how some of that stuff goes. And while they're great videos and they've done a really good job instructing you through, I think I might get hung up on certain things while I'm pulling stuff apart and second guess myself, and I don't always want to refer back to the video. So that said, I'll add some links to this because I did go watch some videos that were phenomenal. Nate with Dirt Lifestyle does a really good job walking you through not only the step-by-step specifics of re-gearing your rig, but even the functionality behind what a ring and pinion does. War Paint Off-Road, I found his videos to be really helpful. He's done some good breakdowns on how to re-gear your rig. And then JK Gear and Gadgets, he also did a really good job with breaking down how to install lockers and re-gear. So stuff is a little different from rig to rig, so depending on what you have, you may want to find a how-to video that's specific to the axles you're doing. Dana 44s, Ford 9-inch, Toyota axles, 14-bolt rear, Dana 60, whatever it is you're doing. There's a lot of that stuff out on YouTube already, so you may just want to find the one that's specific to you and get an idea of how everything looks and works through one of those how-to videos. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit more about the general use of the tools that we have and the things that we're doing in order to do a gear change. So for those of you that are new to the channel, we've got a Jeep WJ Grand Cherokee at 2003, and we've 1-ton swapped it, which means we have a Dana 60 up front and a 14-bolt in the rear. Now the Dana 60 was the one that I was kind of dreading. I understood that the carrier is very large. It's heavy, it's hard to come out, and you want to make sure that your backlash and everything is set with your pinion when it goes back in. So I knew it was going to take a little bit of time. We took apart a stock 1992 Dana 60 high pinion front out of a Ford, open front end, 410 gears, and we were going to put a Yukon Grizzly locker in it and 538 gears. So re-gearing everything 538s all the way around. The 14-bolt rear was 410s, but it was also a limited slip rear end. And what I didn't know about it until we got in there a little ways is that the limited slip carrier is definitely different from the open carrier. And in order to install the Grizzly locker that we had, we needed the open carrier to go with that as well. So I'll touch on a few of those things just so you're aware. But what we're going to talk about is just the tools that I have, what you really need to make this happen, and kind of the bare minimum, because when it came down to it, I may have been a little over prepared for some of these things. Jasper brought down some of his stuff, and because he's got a few tricks of the trade and things that he's done in the past too, I was worried about things like, you know, making setup bearings and just other things that I may not have, and so I probably went a little overboard. And in reality, Some of it is just going to take a little bit of brute force to get the carrier out. You're going to want to make sure that you measure your shims, and then you're just going to want to take your time to get it all set up. So in total, I spent an entire day doing it. I know Justin, my buddy at the beginning of the video, he cruised over in the afternoon because he thought I'd be long done by then. An entire day from, I say basically about 8 a.m. until about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. We tore down and rebuilt, re-geared, re-locked 2 axles entirely and got them completely done in one day. So Jasper had cruised up planning to spend Sunday as well, but it ended up working out just fine, and we knocked it all out in one single day. So if you want to grind it out in a 13, 14-hour day, by all means, go for it. You could also break it up a little bit, and if you're doing it on your own, then maybe you've got some time to do that, and you don't have to crank it out that fast. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about the tools and what we used. All right, so on the whole, you're going to need your normal sockets and wrenches, things like that, to take everything apart. You're going to need to pull your axles down. I'm not going to go through all of that process just because it's not really something that you need to hear me say. The specifics that I'm going to talk a little bit more about are make sure that you have certain tools that you're going to need and you're going to use quite a bit of. This bearing puller is a must. We had to use this a whole bunch, and I will include the link down in the description. I actually got this one. I did get it off Amazon. It is the exact same one, as far as I know, that you can get from other places for quite a bit more. Jasper actually brought one that was similar, and he really liked a couple of things about this that he thought were really high quality. So it worked really well. You've got a lot of different options for your bearing puller and sizes, things like that. So that was awesome. That is a must. Again, I'll keep a link down below. If it's something you need to pick up, I found one that worked really well. It's a really good setup, and it's a really good price. Now you're going to use that for a lot of different things. Once you get your carrier out, you're going to use it for pulling off the bearings at the end. But one of the first things I will say, and this was right off the bat one of the first things that I realized I wouldn't have thought of necessarily. When I think about putting in new gears in my head, having not done it before, I'm thinking there's going to be some size differences, not only in the ring gear obviously and the pinion, but setting up however it's going to lay out. I would think that we would need to set up shims and pull it in and take it out several times. But the very first thing that we did was take this set of calipers, and that's another point here is make sure you have a good set of calipers. Make sure you got something that perhaps has a digital readout and millimeter and inches so that you can really see exactly what you got going on, and these were invaluable. I would say have something that's digital. It just makes it a lot easier. So using the calipers, we pulled out the carrier, and then we started measuring the shims. So that would be the first thing I would suggest, is when you're doing this, take things apart carefully, pull them out, and make sure that you take good care of those shims and measure exactly what's coming out when you pull it out of the carrier. Now in terms of pulling out the carrier, I mentioned it took a little bit of brute strength. Have a pry bar. Pry bar is necessary. You're going to find a good spot in there that you can get behind it. Jasper actually had another one that was shorter than this, but really similar. When I do this again, I will actually have a couple of these that are a little shorter as well, just so you've got a couple of different angles to go on. But a pry bar is key, so make sure you've got yourself one of those. An air hammer. This came in handy countless times for pulling off the pinion, for taking the pinion out, for putting it back on, for removing the yoke, for putting it back in. We used the air hammer for a lot of different things, and it really, really helped a lot. Now, honestly, I had this sitting in a box because it's something that I had prior. I haven't used this very often, so this is the most use that this thing has seen ever. I would say, without a doubt, make sure that you have an air hammer on hand to do the gear swap, because there's just a lot of things that you can use it for, and it works really well for pushing and pressing things on that you're going to have to take on and off countless times. So while we're kind of going through this stuff, that's the other thing I would say is have patience with this. It's not a quick thing. It's not something you're just gonna tear down, rebuild, throw back in and be done. It's gonna just take you a little bit of time, and it's not even that anything goes wrong throughout it, it's just that it's a process, especially with the Dana 60. I've seen some of the other swaps, and you know, a Dana 44 looks a little bit easier to maybe come in and out, but a 60 is a huge carrier. There's a lot of compression in there, and it takes a little bit to get it out. It takes a little bit to get it back in. You need to get it back in, you need to get it set up. Little things like marking your caps and things like that. Again, refer to some of these step-by-step videos. I know Ian at Big Tire Garage has done a really good job with that as well. These are just some basic fundamentals of it, but the idea of being able to get in there and do it yourself is really what I'm focused on. The task is not too big for you to take on. If it's something that you're even remotely interested in doing, give it a shot. There's nothing that you could do that's gonna screw anything up. Just give it a shot, work slowly at it, have patience with it, and take one thing, one step at a time. So as you work your way through things, you know, having a punch, having, you know, your mallets for different things, even just a rubber mallet for beating on the side of the ring gear as you're prying and taking it out. A second set of hands is helpful, so it was great to have Jasper there. I'm pulling on stuff or prying with pry bars while he's kind of beating it back and forth one way or the other to get that carrier to come out. We talked about a case spreader, and it was something that he mentioned and I kind of looked into a little bit, but I don't even recall what the price on it was. The bottom line is when you look it up, a case spreader is something that you can buy that would help to open up your carrier a little bit, but it's 1/15,000th of an inch is what it says it opens up the case. Now, that may be just enough to help that slide out a little bit easier, but in all reality, for the price of it, the amount of time that I'm probably gonna use it, I'm not gonna buy a case spreader. Like I said, just have patience and use some pry bars and some brute strength and get that thing out of there. Obviously without breaking, bending, cracking, or marring anything up. But you can do it, you can work that out and it'll happen. So once you got the carrier out, like I said, you go through and measure everything. Now, one thing that we did notice is that the pinion had actually been machined in a tight enough tolerance. It was almost perfect to just fit a couple of the shims on it that we needed, because the way that Yukon Gear had it set up was that where the collar of it was, it made up for one of the shims that was on there, and they've done a really good job machining that in a way that worked really well. All right, so the new pinion versus old pinion.
I got new pinion is at 47.59, and the old pinion was 46.92. We add the shim pack to the old pinion. We got 0.67, which comes out to 47.59. We add the baffle to 47.59 on the new pinion, we get 48.05. And if we add the baffle to the 47.59 on the old pinion, we get 48.07.
That's awesome. So they basically machined it with such a close tolerance that you get rid of the shim pack entirely.
Exactly. Yeah. Once we install it, we'll run the pattern based off of this. If it's good, we'll move forward with it. If I think it needs some adjustment, we'll adjust from there. But as it's looking, it should, in theory, work out perfectly.
Awesome. Pumped. Yeah, that's crazy. Good job, Yukon.
Yeah, right.
Again, measuring everything, writing it down, taking notes of what you've taken out, where the shim packs are, how big they are, what the thickness is, and then same thing with your pinion. Just measure everything. Write it all down. That way you know exactly what's come out and what you can expect to put back in. Now as you put on your ring gear, having a metal file or a rasp, you want to just, you know, slide this back and forth and take the burrs off. Another cool thing that I hadn't even thought of, and I wouldn't have, we have brake clean, but he brought big cotton swabs. That's what I wouldn't have thought of. Just cleaning out the holes in the ring gear, such a good idea. You don't know what's down in there. brake clean, get some of that stuff out, but using those big cotton swabs, pick them up at Harbor Freight, I don't know, steal your mom's or your girlfriend's, whatever, little ear Q-tips. The big cotton swabs though, awesome way to go. Cleaned out all the bolt holes for the ring gear. Make sure everything's super clean, make sure everything's deburred and flat, and then start reassembling. As stuff goes back together and you get your carrier back in place, the locker's pretty self-explanatory. So if you're using like a Grizzly locker like I did, it's a full carrier in the front. You're bolting your ring gear right to it. You gotta press on your bearings. We do have a press that we used and that came in very handy. Obviously to use it with some of your bearing pullers, and some of these things can also double as a press as well. Flipping over some of the bearings you already have and using that, really helpful.
So I prefer to freeze the carrier myself. Just once these are warm, they pretty much drop on with the shim pack. Give it a couple taps, give it a go. So carrier bearings will get heated, carrier will get frozen. Outer pinion bearing, can't really do much with that since it's one of the last components and it's a press fitting, which we can just use the air hammer to drive off without risking damage because we'll use the back of the pinion. Interior pinion bearing, we'll go ahead and heat this, and we'll also freeze the pinion when we do that, so it has an easier mating surface.
Okay, cool.
Yep. And go around this too with some fine sandpaper, kind of get this mill scale off.
Okay.
So it's not grabbing on.
Make sure it's nice and smooth.
Yep, same with this outer one too.
Okay.
We've had issues in the past where this mill scale's
just enough that
just enough that it's put a lot too much pressure on the bearing and grenaded the bearing in the press. So
yeah, we don't need that.
You know, and today we won't be using the press, we'll be using a hammer.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So there's a couple other things that I would actually get for next time too that I don't have right now. We did make do with what we had, and like I said, some of the collars for this with some of the other bearings and things like that worked out well, but an axle seal press, I might do that. It would probably help fix it might help with the inner seals. That's one of the things I think I actually saw Ian at Big Tire Garage use to push in the axle seals on both sides. That would be super helpful. It's not a crazy expensive tool. It would be nice to have that press. A shim driver, that would be nice too. It would just help a little bit to get the shims into place where they need to be. So I might consider that, although not necessary. And lastly, one of the things that I think definitely would help, and I would definitely get, is a larger bearing and a race driver. So I do have a set already that I use, but it's a little bit smaller. I think I'd get a bigger set for that as well, because it would help with some of those bigger bearings, especially if you're doing large 1-ton axles. It's definitely different than some of the other stuff that I've done in the past. So just having a bigger set of bearing and race drivers, give yourself a range. Again, that's stuff that, you know, I always say if it's something you're not going to use a lot of times, Harbor Freight stuff is fine. You can find other things online as well. So I'll include, again, links down in the description so that you've got an entire list of the things that I'm using, and you can just go pick it up all in one shot if you want to. And these are things that a lot of them are going to be, you know, might use them a few times, but I'm not using them in a commercial shop. I'm not using them repeatedly over and over again. They're things that are going to last for what I'm doing, and it gives me the right tools to make these things happen too. So as we're putting everything back together, get your carrier in place, and then one of the big things you're going to want is a dial indicator. So again, pick this up online, not too expensive, definitely a must, gotta have it. So the dial indicator is going to help you to see where that backlash is. To be honest, that's one of those things too in the videos that until I saw it and understood how turning it and getting the backlash worked with the dial indicator, I didn't fully get it. But you're really just pushing it up against the tooth and you're seeing what your backlash is and how far that pinion's moving. And
we have the dial indicator set at the same pitch of the tooth, where we have a flat surface for it to hit. I'm going to use 70 right here as my reference point, and then I'm going to rock the gear back or forth and then see what the exact thousandths of an inch measurement it is. And we're going to shoot, like I said, anywhere from 6 thousandths to like 10 thousandths is ideal. 12 thousandths would be okay too, but tighter we are with brand new gears and bearings, the less backlash you'll have later on down the road, and the less possibility of slack in there that could be damaging, rocking back and forth off road or hammering down on it. So.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Honestly, we're a little tight on the backlash, but
That's like right in the. You said 6 to 10, and we're at about 5-ish.
4.5, 5.
Yeah.
But I'm going to sacrifice backlash every time for the pattern that we got,
Okay.
because we can't ask for a better pattern.
Yeah.
Like that's.
Also, I don't want to do this again.
You don't want to spend hours.
Yeah.
But
No, that makes sense. Okay.
yeah, so it's just that slop, like,
Right.
you know, you ever.
I see how it's measuring it now too. That makes sense.
Yeah.
You're gonna have the tolerances in your ring gear set when you get it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, and I mean you can always look it up online, but if I'm not mistaken, there was even a pamphlet in with the Yukon stuff that shows you all your patterns for what you want to look for once you're running the paint on the gears. So I bought some of that too. You probably don't need to buy it if you buy a gear set and a master rebuild kit, which is what I purchased. Those usually have it in it, so you've usually got a little bit of the paint. What they sent me worked plenty for what I needed, and now I have a big tube of it that is probably going to be a while before I use it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So I don't want to go on and on about this stuff. Honestly, this was, again, just supposed to be a video that kind of showed you what we did, the process we went about, show you the tools that we use, give you some suggestions on tools you should use. I will also link down below with Yukon and the things that I purchased to rebuild these axles. 538 gears, master rebuild kits for both axles, grizzly lockers front and rear, and picked up some new Yukon diff covers, so pretty pumped on those. But all in all, it really wasn't that complicated. It worked out really well. It went super smoothly. We worked from, I'd say, 9 a.m. Yeah, 8, 9 a.m. by the time we got going, to about, I would say, 2 or 3 in the afternoon on the Dana 60, and we did not stop, and it was 100 degrees outside, so we grinded it out. But we finally got the Dana 60 done, dug into the 14 bolt, and the 14 bolt goes a lot smoother because it has next to the shims, it's got, I don't even know what you call them, but basically the caps that unscrew on the side, that lets you loosen that up. You can loosen them up with a screwdriver, and carrier comes right out. That was the caveat in this. So when I purchased my axles, I made sure that the Ford Dana 60 front had 410 gears that matched the corporate 14 bolt disc brake rear. And because I thought I was going to try to run 410s for a while before I did this upgrade, I found one with a limited slip, because I thought, hey, if I can get one with a factory limited slip, that might help me in the meantime and get a little bit of extra traction. Little did I know I'd detonate my entire transmission, which I'll give you an update on as well. But that was the caveat, is that when we opened it up and we tried to put the Grizzly in the limited slip carrier, it didn't work. It didn't even come close. It didn't fit right, and we're just looking at it like there's no way this is going to work. What's going on? I think that's when I found the Warpaint Off-Road video. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Warpaint Off-Road. That's when I found his video, and he showed the open carrier. Thankfully, the Durango is on 14 bolts front and rear, and those both had open carriers, and thankfully, again, I'm kind of a hoarder with some of that stuff, and I don't just throw it away. So I had 2 open carriers with all of the ring and pinion and everything down below my workbench. Got a little spark and thought, oh man, I think I got one of those. As soon as we did, pulled it out, realized, yeah, this is exactly what we need. We just need to get the open carrier set up. So we used the open carrier from that, got everything packed back in the axles, and they're good to go. So 13-hour day, 14-hour day, start to finish. Don't need a ton of tools. There's just a few things that you need. Don't need a ton of skill. Just need a little bit of persistence and a little bit of thoughtfulness as you work your way through this process. So this is a video encouraging you to go ahead and tackle this job if it's something that you think you want to take on. If you've got a buddy that can help you out, I'm sure the two of you can brainstorm through things you might run into. And like I said, I haven't done it yet. I have been underneath and around Dana 44s as well. Pretty common axle. If you haven't done a full 1-ton upgrade and you're running a Dana 44 and you want to swap that out, or maybe you've got a JK Rubicon or a JL or a JT or something like that, or Toyota axles, might be a little bit easier to do those. The Toyotas have third members. Not crazy complicated to get in and start tackling that stuff. So this is really just me saying, take it on. It's probably a lot more straightforward than you might think that it is. So don't hesitate to take on a job like this and see what you can do, because you might surprise yourself. All right, so let's take a look at the where we're at now. As far as the WJ update. Yeah, here's where we're at. Let's do that. All right, so little WJ update. Put the Copart transmission in, and again, for those of you that are new, destroyed the transmission in this thing, running it back and forth to King of the Hammers way back in February, and found a donor Jeep on Copart. Thought I'd pick that up. I think I bought the whole thing for about 1,200 bucks. Other things in there, including a transfer case and things like that I thought would work out well for me to have. I ended up putting the Copart transmission in. I don't know how I did it, but in the process of doing it, I managed to jam the torque converter, which I think fell forward a little bit, into the transmission, and it kind of flattened out a portion of the torque converter. It locked up the flywheel. I had the entire thing in place. It went in just fine, but for some reason, once I got it in and the flywheel was all set up, or the torque plate, whatever the hell it is, it's not a flywheel, but either way, I got it in there, and I couldn't get it to spin. I couldn't get the starter to start. I pulled it all back out and looked at it, and pulling the transmission in and out of this kind of made me think a little bit more about putting a Copart transmission in it. And so ultimately what I've decided, after pulling the original and putting the other one in and then pulling it back out, is that I really don't want to do this again. And you have to take out the entire front axle to get to the transmission, which isn't a real fun time anyways. So I didn't want to put a Copart trans in there that, had 150,000 miles on it, while it moved forward and backwards just fine. Like I said, I really just don't want to do this again. I want something that's reliable and something that's going to last. So we're rebuilding the transmission. I've got some help from a shop down the way that I know of real well. That's helped me out with some other stuff too. So pumped to get that back in, and we'll have a fully rebuilt, fresh transmission to go back in this thing, and then the axles will get back underneath it. Those things are ready to go for the most part. So this is how this looks right now. The axles, as far as the gears and lockers go, are done, but there's a couple other things that needed to be done too. So on the rear here, excuse my cardboard protective templates there for painting. I was trying to do some other stuff, and we don't want to get paint all over the brakes and everything else on the end. So what we are doing, we're setting up new brakes on this. So I have steel braided lines that go side to side. I believe this kit came from Off-Road Design. I think it came from Off-Road Design. So those guys have a kit for the 14 bolt. And then I got these little weld tabs to put those on there so that we can lock the line down to it. I got an extended line that goes up in the back as well, because the one we were running was just a little bit too tight for me, and we did the same thing in the front. What I decided to do was go with AN lines and fittings and build out my own for the most part, with the exception of the off-road design kit for the 14 bolt. That way I've got stuff that fits the way I want it to. It's custom to my build, and I know I'm not stretching them too thin. So new brake lines, front and rear, all the way around. I want to get the e-brake working again. So we pulled off the rotors, which isn't something I had done in the past, and got those adjusted and all situated so that we can actually put in our e-brake line. These are the tabs that we're using, and they'll all get, this is just kind of mocked up on here, but they'll all get strapped down here to this. Each of these blocks has been welded on here to lock down the line. We've got a bolt here that holds on the T-fitting, but this will all get locked down and finished up. So the 14 bolt's looking pretty good. Now, the Dana 60 front, we've got some high steer stuff that's going on for double shear, and I've been back and forth on what I'm going to do. We're definitely going to use hydraulic assist, and quite honestly, after looking at the different kits, I think what we're going to try doing is we're going to go with the trail gear setup, and we're going to run that, and we're going to make our own plumbing on the steering box and make our own hydro assist. So that we're going to do here real soon. But after going through everything, we're going to get the double shear set up on the Dana 60, and we'll come up with our own hydro assist setup that's more budget friendly. I don't have $1,800 to $2,500 to shell out on an entire hydro assist system right now, and we have some really strong steering components that we're going to use anyways. So speaking of steering components, one of the things I'm super pumped about is this awesome pitman arm. This thing is a beast. This is from Genrite Off-Road, and I saw it on one of their rigs back when I was at King of the Hammers, and I thought, man, that makes so much more sense than my drop pitman arm. It's a lot burlier. They're running it on, I think they're JKs that they got it on some of their gnarly rigs. They definitely put it through the paces, so that's what we're going to use. We're going to do this double shear setup that we have from, we're going to do the double shear kit from Beyond Precise. We got to get that on there. But I've had a lot going on, had a lot of different stuff in the works. We sold a JK, I sold a JL, had some stuff to do with both of those before I got rid of them. Got rid of the JL and decided, man, really should have kept that one. Had a couple others come and go, and my wife said, I think we do want a Jeep. I think we want something else that's not your Grand Cherokee, because she doesn't love riding around in this thing all the time. She wanted something that was a little bit more comfortable, but something that we could still wheel. So we've added a member to the family, and pretty pumped on that. While the WJ needs some love and some attention, I've got a little while before that I get that transmission back, probably about a month or so, which is perfect because we're headed down to Trail Hero. I'm going to head out to the Ultra 4 race at Lake Havasu. We've got a little bit going on over the next month, and we wanted a rig to take with us. So the JL is the rig that's going with us, and we're going to do some upgrades to that. In the next video, I'll give you a little walk around of the JL, what it is, what it's already got on it. We found one that wasn't overly modified because personally I like to do things myself, and I don't want a bunch of extra stuff on things that just isn't the way that I would do it or isn't necessarily stuff that I like. So I found one that's really clean, had a lot of decent components already on it, but wasn't overdone or overbuilt yet, and still was something that I could make my own. So got a few new things for that. We're going to get this thing ready to go. As it sits right now, we leave in about a week and a half. All right, so that's a wrap for today. I appreciate you guys watching. Got a lot more coming up with the JL. Got a lot more coming up with the WJ. Come to think of it, somebody told me the other day, you got to have a name for the rigs. It's not you don't just want to call them the WJ and the JL and the Durango and all that. We need to come up with names. I'm not a good namer. I don't like corny things, and I'm not a great name thinker-upper. So if you guys have comments or suggestions, let me know what you think we should call the Durango. Let me know what you think we should call the WJ, and what should the JL be? Give me some names for these things. We'll start referring to them that way. I'll try to think of some stuff too. But in the meantime, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Hit that thumbs up if you don't mind. I would appreciate it. And until the next time, have a great day. We'll see you soon.